welcome. Nice to have you with us on a Wednesday afternoon as we talked about what's going on as far as the world of sports is concerned. Yours truly, Christopher Russo, here, of course, on the great SiriusXM 82. Eddie, Colin, Bill, and Steve amongst the crew today as we chat to you about what's cooking. 888 Mad Dog 6, that's your two-way sports talk telephone number on our Wednesday afternoon midweek show. Still frozen across America. Games rained out, snowed out, frozen here in New York, 40-something degrees, as this really incredible stretch of weather in the last month and a half continues really around the country, except for obviously Florida, the South, and some in California. 888 Mad Dog 6 on the great SiriusXM 82. Steve Phillips will join us today. We haven't heard from him in a while. We'll do our little baseball start with Steve. We look forward to that. We'll do a little NBA and a little NHL. And, of course, for our day, Vegas gets home. First team out. We start the postseason with 32 teams, 32 cities represented with the 16 in each sport, and we eliminate our first one in Los Angeles. They're done. The Kings. We'll get to that in the course of our day here, too, as we chat about what's going on in the world of sports. Huge game tonight in the NBA, and we'll get to that with the Cavs in game 2. Lots to do, though, with baseball today, and let's start there. I know Steve and Danny got a little traction with it, so why not? With the whole scenario with the frozen tundra, so to speak, where is John Facenda when you need him? I mean, my goodness gracious, everywhere you look around, these games are just, it's absurd. I mean, the game today in Detroit, ski caps, obviously they snowed out, or I don't know if it was raining or snowing, combination of both in Wrigley Field. They did that at 10 o'clock this morning. I mean, the weather is just an absolute mess, and I don't know what baseball is going to do about this, but this is the worst they've ever had. 25 postponements already in 2018. The all-time record for the month of April was 12, and they've had 25 already. They've had 26 postponements all of last year, and they're one away from that, and it's April 18th. I mean, think about that for a minute. Last year, they had 25 postponements in baseball, and this year, they've already had they had 26 last year, and this year, they've already got 25. I believe last night's 3, or the last couple days, the 3 made it 25. Might be 26 now, but it's in the mid-20s. This game today with the Cubs was either 25 or 26 with the Cardinals, whatever it might be. It has really caused a major havoc around the sport. And in the games they do play, you can't watch the games because it's very difficult to watch games with snow flying all over the place, hail, rain, and wind, and fans huddled up in parkas and players playing with ski masks. It's very, very tricky. Now, listen, you can't kill baseball for the start here on March 28th or 29th, whenever that Thursday was, because that first weekend, although it was cold and baseball starting in March is stupid, they did that because the Players Association had bargained for that. As I've said to you for weeks, they wanted the omelets, the extra seat on the bus in spring training, and they wanted an extra few days off in the regular year, so they got that, and instead they basically gave the owners everything else as far as international pool money, draft pick, free agent compensation, the whole 9 yards. They settled for the perks of life deal, and they got it. And as a result, they started a few days earlier so we can squeeze these games in over 162. They are not going to end this season earlier, folks. This is not a situation where by starting on March 28th or 29th, that means that baseball is going to end on September 25th and the World Series will be over by Halloween. No. That doesn't mean that. What it meant is that they have an extra 3-4 days to squeeze in 162 on the calendar. Now, as it turns out, this year they're going to need that based on the idea that, with all these rainouts and postponements, the extra days off are now going to be littered with ball games, mostly day-night doubleheaders on these one-night stands throughout America in the summertime, and beginning really as early as April 28th when the White Sox will go play in Kansas City. So that first weekend, although we had some postponements that first weekend, it wasn't brutal like it has been ever since. So it's hard to kill baseball starting early. I don't think that is the reason why baseball has had such a terrible start, and I don't want to go kill baseball now because the weather still stinks here on April 18th, and you would think by April 18th the weather would be halfway decent, at least in certain places. I mean, it's usually in the low to mid 60s in the Northeast in April in the daytime, and right now it can't crack 43 where I am. So it's really just 20 degrees colder, and it's going to be a complete washout tomorrow. And the weekend, we're supposed to go crazy and get the suntan lotion out because it might hit 53 on Saturday afternoon. I mean, just think about that for a second. Forget playing golf, forget doing anything. It's just, it's nasty out. And again, I don't know what the solution is for the sport. It looks bad. The NBA has gotten off to a good start. They've had a lot of road teams win in the early parts of the first round, which adds some excitement. Indiana New Orleans, so from that perspective, that hurts the Major League Baseball. And again, nobody wants to watch baseball in these kind of conditions. Nobody wants to go to the games. I mean, nobody has gone to the games. They've been empty. Anybody saw that Cub game on Saturday afternoon when they had that 9-run, 8th-inning comeback against Atlanta? I mean, there was absolutely nobody in the ballpark for one of the most, they were down 10-2 in that game, for one of the great comebacks you're ever going to see. Or they got 9 2-out runs. Nobody saw it. Because the games are just right now, it's absurd. Now, again, I don't know what the solution is because it is April 18th. And, they play, I don't care how many games they play. They would start the season by now. It's unfair to kill baseball entirely. We all discussed the schedule. The schedule is what it is. I don't know. I know that it's a jigsaw puzzle. And I know a lot of these teams, the warm weather teams, you know who they are, teams at domes or warm weather, they don't want to have a million games in their building in the month of April because it's a terribly attended month. Nobody goes to games in April, even if the weather's great, because let's face it, it's people are in school. It's not summertime. You can't, watch an inning and go have an ice cream and play and slide down the Pepsi can thing as they do on AT&T. Can't do that. Baseball fans, they go to the games and the baseball is the thing that brings them there, but when they get there, they do a million other things. Football, they don't do that. They go to the game and they watch the game. Basketball, they usually don't do that either. First off, it's not many fans. It's indoors. There's not a lot you can do. You can't roam. Baseball, yes, you do. You go to the ballpark and you sit around and, you go out there and you do your thing. And that's why fans don't care about the 4-hour games. It's like a holiday when they go to a ball game. They watch 3 innings. They go take the 6-year-old to get, basically 6 hot dogs and 5, Corval ice creams. And they walk around and they go to the Shea Shack out there in Light Center on the Pepsi Bridge at Citi Field. So, that's what baseball does, and they do that in the summertime. So, but I don't. Now they're going to be able to do a lot of day-night doubleheaders. That is for sure. So, I don't want to kill the sport starting in April 18th because you're going to get bad weather here, and even if you don't get bad weather, you are going to have to start it unless you play 80 games. Your season's going to have to start sometime in April. So, right now when the weather's bad, it's hard to kill the sport because they would have started no matter how many games they would have played. They would have started now. And baseball's attendance now is terrible. And as I said a second ago, these warm weather teams, and you know who they are, San Diego, Anaheim, Arizona, the Dodgers, Tampa, Atlanta to a certain degree, they San Francisco to a certain degree, Miller Park. They don't want to play. They don't want a heavy schedule in the month of April. They think it's a competitive disadvantage because they got to play a lot of games early. The ballpark is empty. And then they got a lot of road games in the second half of the year when, you're playing for, some big prizes. I know a lot of people have suggested, well, why don't they go out there and give the teams who start in warm weather and have them play a lot of games in April, give them a financial inducement and pay them more, give them a bigger piece of some kind of pie if they have more games in April. Well, I guess you could do that. The schedule is a jigsaw puzzle, though. I did not, like most, understand the idea over the weekend where 6 cold weather cities hosted teams who only come in once. We discussed that. So I think there's things the baseball folk and community can tweak to make it a little better. Why the Yankees were playing in Detroit on April 10th, why the Angels made their one visit to Kansas City, why the Brewers came to New York. The Braves go to Wrigley. I can't understand that. That to me is just very incredible short-sightedness of Major League Baseball. It's not that complicated where you can't make sure you eliminate these one-trip teams visiting in the month of April. You can do it. I know you got to have a couple, but you could do a little better job of not having 6. I know Rizzo made the comment today, the Cub first baseman, let's shorten the season to play 154 games. I'm all for it. I don't want to play any less than that because although the players have ruined the record books, yes, I'm talking to you about Barry and Mark and Sammy and Roger. You've ruined the record books. I still think there is some sort of scenario where you want to play a schedule that Garrick and Ruth and DiMaggio played, and that's at least 154. I read a story this week. Nancy Arman of USA Today said, let's play 142. I don't want to do that because that upsets the apple cart of the context of the sport. They've either played 154 games or 162 for 150 years. I don't all of a sudden now in 2019 with the easy aspect of travel to sit there now and play less than 154. That's somebody who's, the idea is not a terrible idea, but that's somebody who doesn't really follow the history of baseball who has that kind of suggestion. Because if you are a big baseball fan, you need the context of Ruth hitting 60 and 154, Maris hitting hitting 61 in 162. You need DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak. You need the 30 wins out of McLean and Dizzy. You need that. That gives the baseball community and it gives the sport some texture. So I think you need to keep it minimum at 154. Now, again, they have, I don't know, first there's two things. One, I'm not too sure how much that's going to help, because if you play 154, fair enough, you're knocking off a good 10 days you can start April 10th, which is certainly better than starting March 28th. So I get that. I mean, it does give you a little more leeway to start the season a little later. But again, in this particular period this year, I don't know how much that would have helped. But, normally starting April 10th, it's warmer then than it is April 1st. So that's number one. I'm for that. But again, and Rizzo was honest enough to admit it, if you're going to do that, everybody's got to take less money. And the last time I see any of these sports take less money from either TV networks or from grabbing regular season or postseason scenario will be the first time. There's a reason why the NBA and the NHL basically play a marathon, boring regular season to eliminate, in the NHL's case, not even half. One of those sports doesn't, there's more than half that make it, to eliminate only half the teams. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, they play best of sevens in the first round, which is absolutely absurd. The inventory is too much. So when you think about the NBA and the NHL, they should play 3 rounds of the playoffs, not 4, and they should play best of 5s in the first round, not best of 7s. And they don't do it because they want the money. And TNT is going to put games on at midnight in the first round because why? They pay a lot of money to the network, to the sport, to broadcast the games, and they have nothing to show you prime time. They want to show you sports, and that's why baseball goes to FS1. And they made that big deal with Fox, and Fox dilly-dallies around and kills baseball with putting games on FS1 where none of us can find. So I mean, there are a lot of issues. Money talks. I get that. So if Rizzo, and it's a good idea, and at least he acknowledged the fact that's going to mean now if we play 154, that all of us are going to have to take a little less money. And, that's 8 dates. That's 4 home dates for the owners. Don't forget they get a slice of the pie on the road, and that is obviously somebody's going to have to pay the piper on that. Now, they could split the difference, which would be the nice thing to do. And if you want to add a couple of doubleheaders to it, as Rizzo also suggested, well, that's going to take more dates away because obviously 2 for the price of 1. You're going to have, right now you got 81 dates. If you do it 154, you're going to have 77 dates. And then if teams all play a couple of doubleheaders a year, which to me is would be great, whether it's Memorial Day, Labor Day, July 4th, the old day of the twilight Friday night doubleheader in June when you're coming home from school and you got ball games on, and at the old Yankee Stadium or Citi Field or at Shea, whatever it was, nothing better than that. So I'm all for it if baseball wants to basically play a shorter season but play more games compacted by doing so with doubleheaders. If they want to do that, you know what? Fair enough. And if they want to charge me a little more to make up for the fact they shouldn't do that, but I'd probably have to live with it because I think it would be good for the sport. But the players have to take less money, and the first time a player does that, I'll be shocked. There's only the rare guy who takes the less money, and the owners are going to take less money too because they're going to give up dates with their home attendance, and they're going to give up some TV dates. A lot of these teams have these relationships with the networks that broadcast their games. That's a lot of advertising. They split the pie. They split the baby. They all get fat, and they're going to have to give up some of that. So it would be smart. It would be for the good of the game. The season is way too long. You don't need to play 162 games. 154. Each team play a couple of doubleheaders in a year, which would then make it basically a 152 game scenario where you only would have 76 home dates instead of the 81. That's 5 less home dates per team. I'm all for it, and it would help the sport. And then you can start April 15th because the doubleheaders would theoretically, move back the season an extra day or two, or move up the season as it turns out, because by doing that, you're getting some games out of the way. But 142, no. 154, yes. That's Rizzo talking out loud. He's a thoughtful kid. He went to Parkland. He did a very good job there in that first series in Miami. We all like Rizzo. He's a good guy, and we all know he beat cancer the whole 9 yards. So I'm all for it. But, that to me, until I see action, that is a voice in the wilderness. That's what that is. That's a voice in the wilderness. I'd have to have Clark and Manfred get together here because both sides would have to agree with the owners and the players to do what is right. It would be the smart thing, but when has baseball or any sport left money in the piggy bank? Never. 18 after the hour, we continue. Mad Dog Unleashed.
You've heard from the dog.